Om Namo Bhagavate Shri Ramanaya. Today we will be looking at talks with Shri Ramana Maharshi. Talk number 1. A wandering monk, sannyasi, was trying to clear his doubt. How to realize that all the world is God? Maharshi, if you make your outlook that of wisdom, you will find the world to be God. Without knowing the Supreme Spirit, Brahman, how will you find His all-pervasiveness? So, today I would like to explore a profound conversation that took place between the wandering monk and the great sage Ramana Maharshi, which is a very important conversation. The monk deeply engaged in the spiritual pursuit posed a fundamental question: how can one realize that all the world is God? So Maharshi is responding, this is a question that has perplexed spiritual seekers for centuries, and it touches upon a key principle of Advaita Vedanta, the non-duality of existence. The answer to this question has the potential to change how we perceive not only the world but our very existence. The question: imagine a monk wandering from place to place in search of truth, in search of the divine. He had likely read scriptures, meditated and engaged in rituals, but still he struggled with the experience of seeing the divine in the world around him. So he approaches Ramana Maharshi, asking, how do I realize that everything I see, everything in this world is God? This question reflects a very human struggle. We often hear that God is omnipresent, that everything is divine, but when we look around, we see conflict, suffering, and separation. How can all of this truly be God? Ramana Maharshi's response. Ramana Maharshi, in this characteristic simplicity, responded with profound wisdom. If you make your outlook that of wisdom, you will find the world to be God. Without knowing the Supreme Spirit Brahman, how will you find His all-pervasiveness? Let's unpack this. When Maharshi says, if you make your outlook that of wisdom, he is not referring to intellectual knowledge or academic wisdom. Rather, he is pointing to something deeper, the wisdom that arises from self-realization, from knowing our true nature. This wisdom comes from the direct experience, from seeing through the illusions of the world and recognizing the underlying oneness of all existence. He is emphasizing that our perspective shapes our experience of the world. If we look at the world through the lens of ignorance, we will see separation, conflict, and duality. But if we see through the eyes of wisdom, we will perceive unity, harmony, and the divine essence in everything. The all-pervasiveness of Brahman, Maharshi continues. Without knowing the Supreme Spirit, how will you find His all-pervasiveness? Here, he reminds us of a fundamental truth in Advaita Vedanta. The Supreme Spirit or Brahman is the source of all existence. It is the substratum of the universe, the unchanging reality behind all forms and appearances. But to truly experience this all-pervasiveness, we must first know Brahman. And we must know the divine essence within ourselves. In other words, self-realization is the key to seeing the world as God. When we realize that our true nature is one with Brahman, we simultaneously realize that everything in the world is also an expression of that same divine essence. The journey from ignorance to wisdom. This conversation reminds us that world does not change when we attain wisdom. Our perception of it does. We move from seeing the world as separate and fragmented to seeing it as a seamless expression of the divine. In the beginning, we may feel distant from this realization. We may feel that God is something to be found in temples, in churches, in mosques, in sacred texts, or in the movements, or in moments of intense devotion. But as our wisdom deepens, we begin to see that the entire world is a temple, that every moment is sacred, and the God is present in all things, even in the mundane and the ordinary. How do we attain this wisdom? The monk's question and Maharshi's answer invite us to contemplate our own spiritual journey. How do we cultivate this wisdom? How do we realize Brahman? Ramana Maharshi often thought that the direct path to the self-realization is through self-enquiry. He would ask, "Who am I?" By turning our attention inward and seeking the source of our own consciousness, we begin to peel away the layers of the false identification, our body, our thoughts, our ego, until we arrive at the pure awareness that is our true nature. Conclusion. To conclude, the conversation between the wandering monk and Ramana Maharshi is not just a philosophical exchange. It is an invitation for all of us to transform our perception. The monk's question reflects our own doubts and struggles, and Maharshi's response offers a pathway to wisdom. When we shift our perspective from ignorance to wisdom, we no longer see the world as a separate from God. Instead, we realize that everything from the tiniest blade of grass to the vast expanse of the universe is a manifestation of the divine. I encourage each of us to reflect on this in our own lives. How can we cultivate wisdom? How can we begin to see the divine in all things? As we ponder these questions, we may find ourselves moving closer to the realization that indeed the world is God. No religion, no duality. It is just one, that is consciousness. The whole world is just a consciousness, which is nothing but a God. Om Namo Bhagavate Shri Ramanaya. Let's continue with the Talk 2 in the next video. Thanks.